Coming up on this episode.
I got into the room and they were awake. So the two guys with the AKs, they opened up on me. The guy down the left wall with the M4 opened up on me, and time stopped. And as I was falling down the left wall, I shot that dude like 5 or 6 times. So slow that I was watching bullets spin. I was watching vapor trails come off bullets coming out of my weapon and coming at me.
Low pass, show of force confirmed, that's the enemy.
Outside the wire.
Guns good.
Welcome to another episode of Outside the Wire podcast. Today I have a special guest, Navy SEAL Mike Day. You probably heard of him before. He's been all over the internet for the past couple years. Survived getting shot 27 times while he was outside Fallujah during a raid. And welcome, Mike, to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, and so the way I found you is I was actually listening to another podcast, a friend of yours, John, and he has a podcast called Veterans Path, and he talks a lot about mindfulness and kind of working through some of the things that we deal with through meditation. And so I wanted to check out his podcast because I'm going to have him as a guest. And so the first podcast I listened to, you were a guest, and obviously you had your amazing story of the firefight you were in. And I think, I've seen hundreds of thousands of views on your YouTube videos with the interviews you've done. But I think there's more to the story with some of the things that you've learned and how you've kind of healed from some of the stuff. And I think that I'd love to get into some of the stuff, but I'd love first for you to give us a little introduction and kind of share some of the moments of that night in Iraq. Yeah.
Neck deep in grenade pins.
Yeah.
There wasn't many grenade pins, just one, but
that's all it takes is one. The one comes out and it changes the game.
Well, yeah, I say I joke that the best thing financially that's ever happened to me is getting shot 27 times. But I was extremely lucky. I took 16 to the body, 11 to the body armor, and it was all soft tissue except for 3 rounds. I had 2 rounds go through my scapula, shattered my right scapula, and my left thumb was almost amputated. Everything else was soft tissue. It makes a world of difference. I was at the CARE Coalition as a SOCOM CARE Coalition Wounded Warrior Advocate for almost 7 years when I got out. It was a crazy transition going from being tip of the spear, going out and terrorizing people in the middle of the night to being a social worker.
Right.
But I think that was more, I cherished those times and that time because of people I met and what I learned in that job as a social worker. And I believe I was a better social worker than I was a SEAL. I think I learned more about myself and other people in those times and medical care. But it's always been like a series of like unfortunate events that had taught me through trauma, how to build the resiliency to get past the things that happen in my life.
Yeah.
And it's just become a practice. It can go the other way too. You can, bad stuff can happen to you and you can look at it in a negative aspect and you will have all the language with it that tells you that it's bad. It's going to continue to make you feel bad. And you just keep putting the language on it to the point where you're the victim and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a definitely a theme that I'm starting to see. The more guys that I talk to and the more people that have experienced combat and kind of had that dark moment and then made a choice. And they kind of recognized that when they were in that dark spot, they were kind of adopting that victim mentality. And then when they realized that they had it within them to do something different, then it was, they kind of took control themselves. And that's part of this podcast is my hope that people can relate to the stories that we tell and realize that, you know, you have the ability, once you've learned the tools, you have the ability to make your life whatever you want it. So the story that I'm sure everybody wants to hear, so I'd love to talk a little bit about it, is obviously taking 27 rounds. And so you were in undisclosed location outside Fallujah, and you were chasing some bad guys who had shot down a couple of helicopters, right?
Yeah, this was the night that I got shot up was actually the second time we went after this one. 3 nights prior to that, we launched in vehicles and we got IED'd on the way in. And the trigger that was telling us where the target was went away. So we lost the target that night, came back, got helicopters scheduled, came back 3 nights later, did a foot patrol into the target, got some notification from overhead that there was some chatter on the bad guys' radios. Didn't really know if it was in our area because they were kind of covering like a wide area with 3 different operations going on at the same time that were not connected to each other. So instead of hitting the 5 buildings that we were supposed to that night, we decided to just hit the primary one, where we thought the person we were going after was most of the time. You know, that we call that pattern of life. The pattern of life puts somebody somewhere more times than others. The likelihood of them being in that place is higher. So we decided, since the chatter was there, we're just going to hit that primary target. Got up to the house. The breacher team went up, and a breacher team is usually a 4-man team that use a bunch of different methods to open a door, from turning the doorknob to putting a bomb on it and opening it. But they cracked the door that night with a mechanical breach, just crowbarred the thing open. And it was a short room, which means there's no access to the rest of the house. And I was on the next point of entry. So I opened that door, got into that foyer. It was a small foyer with 2 doors. Clark Schwedler, the SEAL that was killed in action that night, was on the initial breach team and had to come all the way out through from that initial room through the carport to the foyer, and saw that I was holding on 2 doors waiting for somebody to take control of the other door. Well, he came in, the train split. We did a simultaneous room entry. And as soon as I got in the room, 4 dudes just opened up on me. So there was 2 dudes in there with AK-47s. One had an M4, and there was a service pistol. So the M4, this was an Army unit. So this particular group had shot down 4 helicopters, but they had equipment that they took from an ambush out west. So we had this Army guy's M4, his pistol, his helmet with goggles, his body armor, and then everything that was in his LBE, to include all his magazines with his name still on it. Because a lot of people thought that I got shot blue on blue. That means one of my guys shot me because I got hit with green tip, which it actually penetrated deeper than the AK-47 did.
Yeah, 5.56 a pretty nasty round.
It's hot. And we're not wearing, it was a different type of body armor. It was a 2-part. So we had the plates, the 4A plates, the armor piercing, and then we had soft armor. Well, the green tip went through the plate, and halfway through, I think there's like 22 plies in the soft armor, and that stopped it. And I got that bullet. It's kind of bent in half. But all right, I told you I go off on tangents. So
yeah. So you came in the room.
Yeah, so I get in the room
because I haven't heard I've heard a couple of versions of the story, but I didn't hear what the ammo was. So you got hit by 9mm. Was it the sidearm? Was the M9? Was the soldier's M9?
I believe it was a Beretta. Yeah.
Yeah. So then you had his M4. So you got 5.56 in you, and then you've got the enemy AK. So you've got 7.62, 5.56, and 9mm
Yeah.
all in your body.
Oh, I would hold one of those plates in front of my face and let you shoot all the 9 mil you wanted to, and
Right. Yeah.
it barely makes a dent in those plates.
Right. Right.
But it
Now, are
does
those the
kind of
same
do a mess to
ceramic, the
yeah, they're ceramic.
Sappies, the Sappy plates?
Uh,
So I'm just curious.
yeah, I
I'm
guess.
sure you guys had different gear than we had, but we
Well,
had.
we had sappy because I never wore all that neck stuff and the side stuff, and
Right. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
already too wide to get through the door without all
Right.
that.
Yeah. It's hard. You got to decide, what's helpful and what kind of hinders you from doing your job.
I can't remember the name of the company. 3M bought them. Maybe here in a few minutes. So I got into the room and they were awake. So the two guys with the AKs, they opened up on me. The guy down the left wall with the M4 opened up on me, and time stopped almost to frame by frame.
Mhm.
So from the time I entered that room to the time I landed on the ground next to the first guy that I killed was probably 3 to 5 seconds. It felt like minutes to me.
Right.
Conversation with myself. I literally asked myself, "Are you getting shot?" I had to ask myself that. And as this is happening, I dropped my rifle and I transitioned to my pistol. And as I was falling down the left wall, I shot that dude like 5 or 6 times and I landed right next to him. But like I said, everything was frame by frame. I literally watched his eyes. I watched the life leave his eyes. And it was surreal. I questioned my own memories because it was so slow that I was watching bullets spin. I was watching vapor trails come off bullets coming out of my weapon and coming at me. It
I
was like a scene from the Matrix.
I believe it 100%. That's happened to me one time, 2004, just outside Mamadi in a town called Yusufia. We got hit pretty hard. And I remember watching RPG just sailing right at my head. And I moved up, and it probably was 5-6 feet away. It wasn't like I ducked and it was going to hit me, but I remember kind of leaning back and watching it go over my head. And I felt like I could read the serial numbers on the side of it. So I know exactly what you're talking about, like that moment where it's like you get such tunnel vision, everything kind of quiets, and it's like, and it just whatever you're focused on is exactly what you see, and it's wild. It's a wild moment. I mean, it's the human biology and the adrenaline takes over, and it's pretty cool that the human body can do that stuff.
I'm trying to figure out how to do it on purpose. It's been
Yeah.
happening to me ever since I was a kid. I can remember falling out of trees and it happening. When I was on the Navy parachute team, every time I got into like a really bad rap, it happened. I've read articles about baseball players that could hit a 95-mile-an-hour fastball and they can see that ball. They can see it spin and they can count the threads on the ball.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's actually a scientific term for it. I can't pull it out right now.
It's
But I
definitely
did
pretty.
also had complete auditory exclusion. I had no sound.
Yeah.
My ears were not damaged. Hundreds of rounds were fired in this room. A grenade blew up in it, and I had no damage to my ears.
I heard that lions can blink their eardrums when they roar because they roar to stun their enemies. And I heard that humans can do the same thing. Like, because when we rolled out, I was behind the Mark 19 and we didn't wear earplugs when we went out the gate. And you get into a firefight and you look at your buddy and be like, I remember being on the range and forget to put an earplug in all the way. And you'd be the rest of the day, your ear would be ringing. But then you get in a firefight and you're blasting the 50 cals next to you, the Mark 19's right in front of you, and your hearing's fine. It's definitely some wild stuff that the human body does while you're experiencing that adrenaline rush. And to kind of segue a little bit, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is your understanding and knowledge of the human body, because the podcast that I listened to you talk about, you talked a lot about your firefight, which is obviously a very amazing story. And then you got into some of your other personal stories, and you touched on one quickly and then moved on, and I wanted to hear more about it. And it was your understanding, your belief in the connection between depression and your gut. And so I'd love to hear kind of what your experience with depression was, and then kind of how you figured out your tie to your gut. I've had some issues with my GI since I've been home from deployment, and I'm sure there's a lot of guys that have this similar symptoms, and it was a new idea. And since I heard your podcast, I actually reached out to a nutrition coach to kind of ask her as well what her thoughts, and see if she could help me with some of these ideas. But I'd love for you to hear what your thoughts were and kind of what you learned.
Yeah, like we were talking about earlier, I refused the fact that I was having issues, anxiety issues, because not that I hate the stigma that somebody that has PTSD is considered weak, and I think we've come a long way from that. And I would never say that somebody has PTSD is weak, but I sure shit did it to myself. I wouldn't stigmatize anybody else, but I did it to myself, and I wouldn't tell anybody. And my depression went all the way to the point where I was practicing suicide with my Glock 19. I knew I was going to shoot myself in the chest. I practiced it a couple times, and when I got to that point when I was going to do it, I was getting out of my truck. I got a phone call that stopped me, and I got that little bit of hope that I talked myself out of it, because my boss, he was like, you don't want to do this job anymore. I told him I couldn't do it anymore. He gave me 3 months to go find another job. And that's when I met Dr. Beck. So I had a lot of people that were like, well, we'd like you to go inpatient. And I completely refused going inpatient because of the stuff that I saw when I was at the Care Coalition being an advocate. But like in the past where I had issues, I had people, oh, you should go get this looked at. I always blew it off. Or when I got backed into a corner where someone tried to give me an ultimatum, you're going to go get this done or else, I'll be like, okay, I'll go talk to this person. And that didn't last. I think I talked to 2 psychologists that I didn't get along with for 2 meetings, and found that they both needed more help than I did.
Yeah.
I know more about the second guy than he knew about me. I knew about all his problems before I left his office after 2 meetings. So that wasn't very helpful to me, but it got people off my back. They're like, oh, Mike's working on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Finding the right person to get care from is really hard, because I think you're dealing with vulnerability for yourself, and to be able to share that with someone else takes a lot of trust. And to trust someone, for me at least, they needed to experience something similar to what I experienced before I would believe that they could even understand what I was going through.
Oh man, you got to roll over and show your belly and show all your vulnerabilities. The first step in that is, as a person, is to be able to identify it. I couldn't even identify it.
Right.
I was doing things in my anxiety that I didn't even recognize I was doing. Clenching my jaw, carrying all the stress on my shoulders, which for a lot of people causes headaches. It didn't cause headaches for me. It just felt like I was tense all the time. But until I recognized it, I didn't know I was doing it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And again, think sharing this stuff, the purpose of this podcast is to get these stories and get this information out, because what you just described is 100% for me as well. Like, you can't work on fixing a problem if you don't understand it. You could just be in the middle of it, drowning, not realizing why you're drowning. And all you need to do is put your feet down and you realize you're standing in waist deep water. But if you don't realize that the ground is right there, or realize, what the situation is, you'll sit there and just, die with help literally feet away. And, the more information we can get out to people about how you recognize these symptoms, or how you recognize these traits that are all very similar among all of us, and then here's how each one of us found the path to getting through it. It's powerful stuff, and I love sharing it, and I love hearing about it. So
we come from the military, and I look at everything as a training. So if you're when I got to a bad state, I actually trained myself to be that way. and
Yep.
it happened over a period of time.
Yeah.
A lot of people want the easy pill. They're like, how do I fix this in 1 week? I'm like, you turn into a train wreck over a period of 2 years. You want to fix it in a week?
Right.
You actually have to do the work.
Yeah.
You have to have the proper motivation to want to do the work, because if you don't have the motivation, and sometimes that's a terrible thing about depression. Depression is all internal. In this day and age of people bullying each other and calling each other names, that's nowhere near as bad as what you can do to yourself.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
I
the
was my
worst,
own worst enemy.
yeah. And the worst part of depression is it eats all that motivation away.
It
So
does.
now you need the motivation to do something to help yourself, but your depression has killed all that motivation, and you're sitting there feeling helpless and overwhelmed. The feeling of being overwhelmed for me was the worst. That is what paralyzed me. I couldn't get off the couch. I couldn't even think about even doing basic daily tasks, let alone taking on the huge task of trying to help myself and get back to where I needed to be. Um, so
I was
you're,
freaking out so bad. If you called me when I was driving my truck and I was the phone, I could not split. I could not dual task anything. I had to focus so hard just to drive my truck. I would almost get into wrecks and run streetlights if somebody called me on my phone, because it would distract me from. I couldn't read a paragraph because I couldn't get my brain to slow down enough to comprehend.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I can relate to that 100%. I remember yelling. My wife I'd be in the middle of something and she'd want to talk to me about something else. And I'd get so frustrated and I'd have to tell her, like, please, I can only do one thing at a time. I can do one thing really, really well. I can't multitask. If I'm working on something and then you try to get me to stop what I'm doing and then have a conversation, I can't focus on both. I'll forget what I was doing, or I won't be truly listening to you. And it was so frustrating to me. And
yeah.
yeah, I totally understand that. So you were talking about a doctor. Was this the doctor that started talking about some of your gut health, or?
Yeah, so I'll explain his whole process. People can look him up. Real common sense guy. He's not the only one out there. There's a lot of holistic doctors right now that are looking at and treating basically the neurological system. And a lot of this stuff is not new. What we're calling the gut-brain axis. The gut has a direct effect on the health of the brain. I mean, I think as a society we've been dumbed down. We all know you are what you eat.
Right.
We all know now that the FDA had a bullshit food pyramid,
Yeah.
and eat a loaf of bread a day. That's healthy. That's what the FDA was telling people.
Right.
It was the basis of our diet. That's what everybody thought. No wonder we have over 30% of the population that's obese. Um, but that 7 years where I was an advocate, I got to watch healthcare and how things work for all different types, everything from the worst combat injuries, which I think we're really good at, to dealing with chronic diseases, which I don't think the healthcare system is really, really good at, because we look at the symptoms and treat the symptoms and don't even try to work on what caused the symptoms. There's a lot of people out there right now, if they would just change their diet, they could stop taking their diabetes medication.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of type 2 diabetics out there that take their medication with like a diet soda.
Right.
That makes no sense.
Yeah. The couple times when the VA would prescribe medication to me, it would make me so frustrated, because I always pictured myself, all throughout the Marine Corps, I was this young, super fit, healthy guy. And so I just still picture myself that way. And when I would have these symptoms, these pains and aches and stomach problems and depression and all this stuff I was dealing with, and the VA would be like, "We'll take this medicine," I'd get mad and be like, "No, I don't want to take the medicine, because I shouldn't be like this. Why am I like this?" I wanted to always push past the prescription and get to the root. but I wanted to know why I felt the way I did. I wanted to know what I was doing to cause my body to feel that way, and then fix that, not just because then when they prescribed me antidepressants, all of the side effects that came with it, the lack of sex drive, that was like, that to me was more depressing than the depression part. You know what I mean?
Did you ever have, well, it's all connected. Did you ever have a DNA test?
No, I didn't.
That's another thing I found. So I had a DNA test in the process, and the DNA test told me these are your pre-existing conditions. You're not pre-existing, your
Stuff you're like prone to,
genetically predisposition for.
Okay, yep.
So my family, my father's side has a lot of psychological issues. He was medically retired with schizophrenia. He was a hoot to have as a dad. Made the SEAL teams easy. But I have a genetic predisposition for bipolar disorder, and it's identified in there. But what I found very interesting was that it also told me, you ever get diagnosed with it, don't take these medications. And it's the top 3 medications for depression. And there are hospitals that are doing it now that use that. But I did have an idea. It's like, we got 22 guys committing suicide a day. I would love to go back and get their DNA if I could, run it through that test, and see if that test would have said, hey, this person should not be on this medication.
Yeah.
And I dealt with a lot of people in that 7 years that had, PTSD or some kind of psychological condition. And not once at all those patients that I saw have they been able to give that person a medication without having to adjust it to suit the symptoms that medication caused.
Yeah, or add additional medications to it.
And they're all black label. They make you more suicidal if you had the genetic predisposition for it. They should at least do a $150 test to see.
Yeah.
And some hospitals are.
Well, and the sad thing to me, I mean, I don't want to jump off onto like a conspiracy theory type mentality, but it seems like when the money behind the pharmaceutical company is pushing all these different kinds of drugs, and there's always a new drug out there, and the doctors are incentivized to prescribe the drugs. If that's your purpose for being in the field of medicine is to prescribe drugs, then that's what you do. But when you start going to, like, I was fortunate enough to go to this home-based program I was talking about, and their motivation, they didn't care about medication. They cared about making people better. And so they would just spend more time, I feel like, getting to know you personally, and not just say, well, everybody should take this. Everybody who's got depression should take this drug. And they didn't look at it that way. And it was way more specific. So when you said you took
but healthcare does, because right now you go in and you get a test, whatever the test is for, there's a line on there that if you're here on this side of the line, you're sick. And if you're right on the other side of the line, a 0.02 right on the other side of the line, you're not sick. The doctors I'm talking about are looking at optimum human performance, not whether you're sick or not, because we're all going to be in different states of health. What I'm recommending, what I think healthcare should be, is the process that I went through, and I didn't like the guy. I half-assed it, and it worked. I didn't even go through the whole program, and it worked. So I can explain what happened to me, and it's going to be different for everybody else, but medicine needs to be individualized to the person. And the only way you can do that is to test everything. You got to test the urine, you got to test their fecal matter, you got to test their blood, their DNA, because this doctor is actually using epigenetics. I see a bunch of guys in the SEAL teams, half of them are on keto. I mean, like, how do you know that keto is good for you? You don't. It's another fad diet.
Yeah.
That is selling money, but your genetics may say you should be eating a totally different type of food because you're genetically predispositioned to be able to digest certain types of food.
Yeah.
And he can figure that out.
I've heard, Is that like anything to do with the blood type diets? Is that what that?
Yeah, it's, I haven't, your blood type and your genetics will have you be a very specific machine on what foods you are better off eating to get the
Okay.
vitamins and minerals.
Okay.
We don't use that in healthcare. I think I say every 24 months should have these tests. And I would do social medicine if everybody did these tests and they abided by what was prescribed, which is usually, for me, it was just food. I took 1 week antibiotics, which we overtake right now, which is a huge problem because it kills everything.
Right.
I'm sure in small print, if you look at antibiotics, probably tells you to eat a yogurt or some stupid crap on top of the McDonald's hamburgers and French fries,
Yeah.
which is causing gut problems.
Yeah, because there's
You.
the probiotics, which is the healthy bacteria in your stomach that helps you keeps all that balance, and then you have the antibiotics kill all of that, and then you have the probiotics that you can take to replenish that. But then I was listening to this nutritionist talk about the prebiotics, which are different kinds of foods that you don't have to take medicine. It's just food that gives that bacteria that's in your stomach a healthy place to grow, basically.
So that was my problem. There's a couple different types of flora. I didn't have any of the good flora in my stomach. That's what I'm talking about, is the bacteria in your stomach that actually breaks down the food.
Yep.
And it gets broken down in the stomach, and then it moves into the intestines, and the intestines pull the vitamins and minerals out of it.
Yep.
My body wasn't breaking the food down so that my intestines could do the work. So I was completely deficient in a lot of vitamins and minerals that are associated with depression or causing depression. Vitamin D, B12 was a big one. And the foods that you were talking about, cabbages, there's all kinds of probiotics that you can continue to put in your body.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't manage it, it's going to go bad. And if you eat crap all the time, it's going to go bad.
Yeah.
So
what did they?
That was kind of my case. And over a 2-month period, and like I told you, I was half-assing it. I didn't like the guy. He's a friend of mine now. I didn't want to do it. I was doing it to get people off my back. And I did it all over Skype. And that's why I picked it. I was like, okay, this is the least invasive one I can get into. Mm-hmm. So everybody will leave me alone.
Yeah. And so you said you half-assed it, but did you start seeing symptoms change?
Well, it was over a period of, I would say 8 or 9 weeks is when I woke up one day and everything just kind of started shifting. And I was jumping out of airplanes. A couple weeks after I started getting better, I went out and got a job. Because I had to quit my one at the Care Coalition because that was pretty stressful. I found that it's easier to break things to fix it, and it's hard to be around multiple people every day having their worst day.
Yeah. So you just basically changed your diet.
Yeah, he told me what foods I was supposed to eat.
Now, was this like? Were you eating unhealthy things before that, or were you just eating wrong things?
I ate pretty healthy, but I ate more of as a function just to eat. Didn't have a whole lot of thought or mindfulness into what I was eating. It was just, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat whatever's in front of me.
Yeah.
It was normal before for me to eat lots of meat because I thought I needed meat to get my protein. I actually feel better when I don't eat red meat. Mm-hmm. Bread messes me up. So when I started that, it was very strict. I very strictly followed the diet. I don't have to follow it now. I mean, I can come off it now as long as pretty much the rule I follow now for food is if it's got preservatives or sugar in it, I try to stay away from it.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not hardcore on it because I will have a pizza every once in a while. But I used to eat like a pizza or two a week. Now I know when I eat bread, I feel arthritic.
Hmm.
I can feel it in my joints.
Yeah.
Um, but our ideas on health and nutrition, it's from what I've seen, it's so much more important than we give credence to. It's the basis. It's the basis for our health.
Yeah. So your
But
process was, go ahead.
people get to the point where, like, I know this is bad for me, but it's just this, and then they go use their crappy shampoo that's full of chemicals, and they put on their clothes that has chemicals on it from washing it, and then Beck is really big on environment, EMF, and it does affect people. You know, you start to see stories now about this 5G, how dangerous it is because of what it does to the cells.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a lot of
Cell phone
pushback.
towers.
And people want to call it bullshit conspiracy theory. We have weapon systems right now where we can aim sonic beams at people, make them crap and piss themselves and pass out.
Yeah.
You want to tell me that? But
So you met the doctor and did a DNA test, and then he tailored the diet for you, and then it took you about 8 weeks to start seeing a
it did.
difference. And then so the process, you felt physically better first and then started feeling emotionally better. Was it gradual together? Did you have a moment where you're like, you look back and you're like, holy shit, like this is much better? Or was it just slow, and then when you were done, you look back and said, yeah, this is right?
It was just so gradual. I mean, you got to purge all the crap out of your body that's not supposed to be in there. You got to rebuild it,
Yeah.
so that it can actually work the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, people want the easy pill.
Yeah.
It took
That's what,
2 years to train yourself into this state, and you think some doctor's going to give you a pill that's going to make all that go away?
yeah. Well, that was where I was going with this. Is it's a process. It's not something that, because for me, I've had stomach issues. I've dealt with depression, and I'm going to a nutritionist right now, and she's talking a lot about some of the similar things that you're talking about. There wasn't a DNA test involved or a specific diet tailored to me. It's just more a broad scope of what she suggests. But now that you've mentioned it, I'm interested. This doctor that I go to, I believe that I would be able to get a DNA test and probably look more into this. But one of the things for me is it's always been hard to stay disciplined long enough. Be like, I wanted to lose a little bit of weight. I wanted to get back to that 175 weight where I was when I was, in my fighting weight. And now I'm at like 195. So it's like, it's a lot of work to get there. So I'm like, all right, you know what? I'll cut out Mountain Dew for a while. Well, I do it for like 2 weeks and step on the scale and nothing changed. And then I say, well, fuck that. If it didn't matter, I'm just going to keep doing what I do. But what I'm realizing is you can't do something for 2 weeks and expect a massive change. When, like you said, when you've been doing something bad for years, your body takes a lot longer than a couple days or a couple weeks to heal and go back to normal. You need to pick a very consistent, strict diet that is healthy for you and stick with it for long enough for your body to right itself.
Yeah, you got to go hardcore. If you're a train wreck now, it's nice to have somebody to help you do that too, because you need to keep food logs and all kinds of stuff. But like very measured amounts of food. But once you get past that, if you just live by the guidelines, to stay away from, I like to stay away from bread as much as I can.
Yeah.
I don't, what is that called? Celiac disease? I don't have celiac disease, but I think we all have gluten intolerance at certain levels.
Yeah.
And mine makes me feel arthritic if I eat bread. And then just stay away from preservatives and sugar.
Yeah. Well, I know that one of the things that I learned recently too is, I have some arthritis from the IED that, hit me. It kind of messed up my neck and my shoulder and my left arm and my leg. And I'll have moments where I'll go to the gym and then the next day my muscles will be sore, but I'll also have such inflamed joints where I'll just be in so much pain that I'll have to like lay on an ice pack. And when I talked to this nutritionist, she was saying, well, there are certain foods that if you eat them, they actually cause inflammation in your body, and they will go to those points of injury first, and that's where you'll feel it the most. So it's interesting that you're talking about eating bread and feeling arthritis, and it's the diet that's causing these symptoms, and you think it's an injury, but it's actually what you're eating, and your body can heal the injury if you give it the right fuel to heal itself, because it's designed to heal itself.
Yeah, I like placebo too. I don't know if we got enough time to talk into that, but the placebo effect is very interesting.
Yeah,
It means we heal ourselves, but
yeah. I think there is a lot to your body's mental abilities to heal itself, and having positive thoughts. And one of the things that I just recently learned that ties right back and kind of confirms what you're talking about. I didn't realize this, but like the serotonin, the hormone, the healthy hormone in your body that makes you feel good, 90% of that is produced in your gut. And if you're not eating the right foods and your body's not producing that hormone, that's chemically what leads to this lack of healthy, happy hormones and chemicals in your brain. And you inevitably feel depressed from it.
yeah, it's always been. I'm not anti-drug. I would just like to see, okay, if somebody has an issue, psychological issue, I think it makes more sense to bring him somewhere, purge him of all the crap that might have been the trigger. Because I watch steroids. Steroids are scary. I've watched people trip offline because they dump a bunch of hormones in their body. You got to be careful of that.
Yeah.
There's a time and place for medications, but I think you should get to the point first where, okay, we've eliminated that it's his environment or what he's putting in his body.
Yeah.
You know, get those leveled out.
So
and then if medication's required, because if a psychological condition is mostly described as like a chemical imbalance, why put another chemical into it? Not once did I see one of those psychiatrists prescribe a medication that didn't have to be modified. And they do that as a, what do we call this, standard operating procedure. It's like they know I'm going to give them the medications, my best guess, but I know I'm going to have to probably adjust it.
Yeah, that's exactly what they said to me when they prescribed antidepressants. Is they're saying you got to be really patient with this because your body's going to need some time to adjust. And they dosed me really lightly and then kept increasing it. And then I started feeling these other problems. So then they added another antidepressant to kind of shift the other one back into the right range. And then I started feeling all this other stuff. And I called my mom, and I didn't even realize, but my mom had taken antidepressants. And so I'm like telling her all this stuff. And she's like, you need to do what you feel is right. And she's like, I knew there was a point in my life where these were not right for me. So I stopped and I found something else. And so I did the same thing. I was like, you know what? I don't feel right about taking this medication. And I'm sure that I know plenty of people that have been helped by it. So I'm not saying that I don't think it's right to do, but I knew it wasn't right for me. And so I was searching for something else, and I found other things.
I just think it makes sense I think all healthcare should be every 24 months, some holistic doctor is going to look at all your bodily fluids and make a prescription on how to keep yourself healthy. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of people wouldn't follow it anyway. I mean, we all do stuff that's bad for us. I mean, I wish I can quit chewing this Copenhagen. I probably drink too many beers, but I stay healthy because I eat the right food.
Right. Well, I think that, you have your habits that you enjoy. Like if you enjoy drinking beer and that's what you do to my wife and I, we started drinking these seltzers, Bud Light seltzer, because there's less calories. I used to drink these super heavy IPAs that I loved, but I knew that my body, I would drink 2 or 3 of them, and then I would have, my stomach would feel bloated and crampy, and then the next morning I'd have a headache, and I'm like, it's only 3 beers.
So you're allergic to that type of beer. Yeah. That's the beer I drink, and I think one of the reasons I do that is because the microbrewers are actually using better ingredients. I'm at least telling myself this. I haven't looked into it,
Yeah.
And I know Budweiser is using all kinds of, it's cheap beer.
Yeah.
It's like, you go to McDonald's and you get a 50-cent hamburger. You think that's hamburger?
Yeah. No, I kind of jump all over the place with that stuff, but I agree with you for the most part that healthy ingredients, you're going to get a better product for your body. Let's talk a little bit about, you have a book coming out that talks a lot about your experience in Iraq and obviously the event where you got shot. But you just told me offline a little bit that there's a lot more to the book. So tell me a little bit, are you finished writing the book?
Yeah, it's ready for pre-order right now.
Okay.
Released not in June. It's been a heck of a process. Had to fire one agent and one well-known author because I used a co-author.
Yep.
I don't want him to come at me for defamation or anything, so I won't say his name, but
Yeah.
because he's kind of the guy that would do that.
So
But the book's name is Perfectly Wounded. I have a website, perfectlywounded.com. My social media is kind of a mess. On Instagram, it's Mike Day 5326. But the book is a memoir that describes my childhood, which was very violent. And although I didn't know I was doing it, but I found ways as a child, even though I was being greatly abused, to get past that. And then I describe how that, the SEAL teams were pretty easy for me because I actually thought they were going to beat us up like my father beat me up. I was happy that they could only slap you around slightly.
Yeah.
Everybody would quit buds if they could beat you up, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think it changes. I remember my uncle went through Marine Corps boot camp and he told me he got punched several times. And then when I went through Marine Corps boot camp, they acted like they couldn't touch us and they would joke about, not being able to swear around us and all this stuff. So I think it does change, but yeah, so in the rest of your book, you obviously talk about your time in the SEALs. And then you had said that you do talk more about these topics too, some of the healthy things that you've learned, right? You kind of address that in your book as well. Your time at the CARE Coalition.
I do. I was at the CARE Coalition for almost 7 years, somewhere between 350, 400 people that I was assigned to. Anything from cancer, ALS, to the worst combat injuries. Some of the people that are out in the media now, like Taylor Morris, he's a quad amp. It was hard to have a bad day around that guy or complain about anything.
Yeah.
I'm sure he has bad days, but I never saw one. He was so much fun. Him and his now wife were so much fun to be around. It is kind of hard to complain when you're around somebody when that guy's got a way worse deal than I got.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Well,
somewhere on the face of the planet, there's a dude or a chick that's got the worst deal. That person somewhere.
There's always someone that has it worse than you for sure. And there's always someone who's been where you are and has pulled through and got to the other side. Yeah. And so I really appreciate you sharing your story and your knowledge on health and depression and how we can kind of work through some of this stuff. If really quick, if you were looking to get a DNA test, how did you go about it? Someone wanted to try to do that.
Well, when I was at the CARE Coalition, I investigated a whole lot of treatments. One of the things I saw early on that I thought was hocus pocus, it was called EDMR. Okay. Which now is covered by insurance and actually works. But in the process of going through that, I did a fundraiser back in 2015 for a brain injury center. I got a DNA test done there, and that's where it showed all my genetic I can't even say it.
Predisposition, yeah.
That's all. You can't say that one 3 times. So I kind of gathered information about myself going through different programs and working with different people and actually observing other people going through different programs. And it was just like I was put in the right place to observe the right thing at the right time and meet the right people. I mean, I got kicked out of high school. I was in the Navy at 17. So, I mean, it's definitely coming from the layman's point of view, from observation and what I've seen work. I definitely know that our healthcare system is overly reactive, and that's all they do is react. This is your symptom. You can almost find the same flow charts that doctors are using at the doctor's office.
Yeah.
I mean, people do.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I would like to see healthcare change because people need to take personal responsibility, find the motivation that they want to be healthy, and we need to stop, poisoning ourselves, through all the multiple chemicals that we come in contact throughout the day, our EMF exposure. It's like we know the information, but it's buried in our subconscious, or we are dumbed down to make ourselves believe that a little bit of this ain't that bad. But when you compile them all together, like in the military, we get exposed to a lot of stuff, heavy metals. There's a way to get heavy metals leached out of your system. That's one of the things I didn't do. I still got to go do that. But
yeah, I'll have to look into that because we had Sabo and slat rounds in the 50 cals and all that stuff. And my battalion commander actually passed away last year from lung cancer, and he never smoked. So it was definitely from exposure. And so that kind of stuff scares the crap out of me. Just, these little bugs and these things that can get in your body that you're exposed to during your time in, and you don't even know it's there, killing you silently.
That's you said something earlier about inflammation, and that's exactly what disease and illness is. It's inflammation. And we know what causes inflammation in these cells. From what I've read, it's almost impossible to get cancer if you don't eat sugar. My daughter was symptomatic with what I thought was a thyroid issue. I was getting ready to bring her to an endocrinologist, and because she was completely symptomatic with a bad thyroid, she just couldn't lose the weight, even though she was eating right, working out. So I brought her to another doctor, and Dr. Beck's dealing with her now. But this doctor found that my daughter had a parasite that's pretty common in the country from eating raw food. What is that? H. pylori.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of that.
So to kill, what we did to kill H. pylori? We took sugar out of the diet. It killed it.
Wow.
Because that's what it feeds on.
Okay.
So for 30 days, completely no sugar, no processed sugar. And that's what fixed it.
Wow.
But
I have heard that diseases, illnesses like cancer do feed on sugar. Like that's what they get their cancerous cells. That's where they get their energy from, is the sugar in your blood.
mm-hmm.
That stuff's all very interesting.
Not sugar. You also got to watch out for stuff that turns into sugar.
Like bread,
carbs.
Yeah.
The easiest food to make. I'm lazy right now. I don't feel like cooking. I'm going to throw pizza in the oven, pasta.
And it's crazy because when you talk about like the planning for stuff, and you think, well, it's something super easy, like throwing a pizza in the oven. Well, I started making like just scrambled eggs and avocado and throw it in a little tortilla or just eat it like that. Making scrambled eggs with nothing on them, a little bit of pepper and some avocado is super easy to make. And it's super healthy for you. It's like really good protein and some good fats for your body. And your brain needs that fat. And I was like, why have I been eating? Like, because it takes longer for me to go out to McDonald's and get a shitty breakfast sandwich than it does to make that eggs and avocado for breakfast for myself. And so like, that's one of the things, like, I think for this whole process, everything that I'm learning about, to me, I've become like a student of my emotions and my body. And the more I learn, the more I realize like this stuff isn't hard. It's just, you need to know, you need to have the education, you need to have the understanding, and then you just need to have the discipline to do it. And it's fairly simple.
That's the hard part about it is actually identifying it, letting yourself show your vulnerabilities. That's identifying the issue, and then having the motivation to want to get healthy.
Yeah.
Because you can't tell me somebody that's really obese and still slamming down a 2-liter bottle of Mountain Dew to choke down Twinkies is motivated to be healthy.
Right.
They're just not.
Yeah.
And if you're not motivated to be healthy, you won't do it.
Yeah. Well, I think we learned a lot, and I appreciate you sharing all that stuff. And I'll have on our website, theenlistedclub.com, I'll have this full episode available, and I'll also link to your Instagram and your website so people can check out your book. You said it's available for pre-order right now?
Yes, on my website at perfectlywounded.com.
Okay. Well, thanks again for jumping on the podcast and sharing your story with us, and look forward to talking to you again sometime.
Yeah, when they let us out of our houses.
Yeah, exactly. Well, make sure you catch up on all the episodes of Tiger King while you're locked up.
I haven't watched that yet.
Yeah, you need to. I just finished. It's pretty.
No.
It's amazing.
From what I've seen, I think you probably just made yourself dumber from watching it.
Probably. All right. Good chatting with you.
Right, man.
Take care.
Out here.
Mayhem, this is Bravo 67 QRF. We are movement to contact, exit gate 2. We are Oscar Mike.